do we have souls, or that our mind is somehow independent of the brain, that it'll lift off the brain at death and go elsewhere? Is that
I believe there's a transcendent core consciousness that is comprised of meanings, context, relationships, archetypal ideas that recycles itself, just like everything else recycles itself.
So it's in no sense a product of the brain.
It's no sense a product of the brain, and our whole endeavor in spiritual discipline is to actually go beyond that personal consciousness, that ego consciousness, so we can identify with that transcendent reality, which is the source of space, time, energy, and everything else that exists.
Okay, you put a lot on the table. So Deepak just said some very, seems a strange word to use, but some concrete things that science can criticize. Okay, you just said that consciousness and mind are...
I didn't say consciousness and mind. I said mind is a product of consciousness.
Okay, but this subjectivity is independent of the objectivity of the brain.
There is a subjectivity which is independent of objects. But there's subjectivity which is subjectivity of itself. When you're looking at the brain for consciousness, you're not looking at consciousness. You're looking at synaptic firings. In fact, it is your consciousness that is looking at those synaptic firings.
All right. Let's just keep that in view. All right. Now, you've said there are two things that an incomplete science of consciousness and the mind should want to say about that. One is that having an experience of undivided consciousness does not tell you what consciousness really is or what its relationship to the brain really is. There's nothing about introspection that leads you to sense that your subjectivity is at all dependent or even related to voltage changes and chemical interactions going on inside your head. Okay, you can feel, you can drop acid, you can meditate for a year, you can do whatever you want to perturb your nervous system. You can feel yourself to be one with the universe, and at no point in that transformation do you get a glimpse that there's 100 trillion neurons in your head, or synapses in your head that are doing anything.
It's called binding.
No, it's not. It's called absolute subjective ignorance of what's actually going on outside your consciousness.
You're
You're so Deepak,
you're so dismissive of subjective experience.
I'm not remotely dismissive of it.
To poetry, to music, to art. So dismissive of subjectivity. I'm saying that the whole universe is imbued with subjectivity.
There's nothing more important than subjectivity. It's all we could possibly care about. The fabric of our experience, the changes in our conscious experience, are all we care about. And they have some relation to the physical universe.
Absolutely.
Okay, now the question is...
We give rise to the physical universe.
Okay, that is a statement of metaphysics that is totally unjustified and cannot possibly be justified.
That's why it's a statement of metaphysics, not of physics.
No, metaphysical statements also have to be justified, as it turns out.
Metaphysics statements come from subjective experiences.
All right, you're starting to lose me a little bit. I've let it go, but let's rein it back in. I'm just curious with you tonight. I tried to go down this road with you before, but you didn't really bite, so I'm going to try it again. Are you, I think the question that a lot of people have for guys like you, atheists, agnostics, is, are you comfortable with you must be therefore comfortable with not knowing the answers to big questions, or you have some sort of confidence that there is nothing more that most other people don't have?
Well, twofold. One, yes, by temperament, I'm comfortable not knowing the big answers to the big questions. It's okay to say, I don't know. And just live with it. Believe it or not, that's okay. And
you believe that when Deepak comes up with theories that you would call woo-woo, that he is just simply at his core, whether he knows it or not, uncomfortable not knowing?
Well, I'm not sure about that. I think he likes to layer on the language of science because it seems to ground it in something a little more concrete than just woo. And what we're saying here is that you don't need to do that. You don't need to hinge it to all this jargon, because values like love and tolerance for differences and expanding the circle of sentiments to include more people, those are values that stand in and of themselves because people have value as an end in themselves, not as a means to an end. And that's an Enlightenment value that's derived from scientific and reason and rational principles for the last 500 years. And you don't have to take all of that layer and put it on there that most people wouldn't understand anyway, and it just confuses things.
Is your rock-solid certitude about there not being a God in and of itself a form of orthodoxy?
Well, I'm not rock solid that there is no God. I would be surprised at this point, I have to say. If it was anything like Yahweh, I'd be shocked. But I actually have a little thing I would say if it turned out to be the case, what I would say standing there at the pearly gates.
All right, what is it?
Oh, well, I mean, first of all, it would be, you gave me this brain in your own image that it reasons and doubts and so on, and so I applied it to you. And so, in any case, why does belief matter? Shouldn't it matter more how you comport yourself in life and how you treat other people? And although,
but Deepak, and I'll get to you in just 1 second. But Deepak's point is that molecules don't feel compassion.
Right.
That ethics and love and compassion and empathy are all, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, evidence that can be marshaled in support of an argument for divine.
It is impossible, and Roger Penrose and John Searle would substantiate this. It is impossible for a physical system, no matter how complex it is, to process meaning, to process creativity, to process purpose, to process even, you can map that out, you can show the molecules there, but it is impossible for a physical system to feel those qualities.
Okay, that's simply not true. It's what is true to say is that we don't understand how that is being accomplished, and we don't. And even I'll give you even more than that. We don't understand what the relationship between consciousness and matter is. Now, for instance, if electrons
I'll
were
grant
conscious,
you that, by the way, what you just corrected me on.
So but it's not. There's no reason. It gets you nothing to say it's impossible in science.
Well, I'm
I mean,
just
let's
saying
just,
that very prominent researchers like John Searle and Roger Penrose have made those explicit statements.
Okay, but they're in a much larger conversation. They have more detractors than could fit in this hall. These are areas of genuine scientific uncertainty. But what is obvious is that the way to clarify this domain is not to pretend to know things you don't know.
Well, I'm sorry.
And you're saying. I want to bring Gene in.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm sorry if I gave the impression that I don't know, that I pretend to know things that I don't know. I'm just offering a possible hypothesis. That's why we're calling it the future of God. And I stand corrected.
Okay, so when you say,
I'd like to talk about this.
If I could just tie him down to this one statement, though, because this seems like new information. Okay. If you're saying that when you say we are on a continuum, the consciousness that I experience in myself is the creator of the universe, which you said about 5 minutes ago.
You see, creator is a very anthropomorphic.
Okay, I just want, is that however you said it, is that a hypothesis, or because you said it as just a blanket assertion, this is a fact?
I think
that I'm ignorant of.
See, there are three ways of knowing. One is through empirical observation, what we call the eyes of the flesh. Then there's a deeper knowing, comes from the eyes of the mind. If I want to understand the theorem of Pythagoras, it's activity of the mind. Why does mathematics, for example, describe so precisely the activity of nature? It's one of the most astounding puzzles of the universe. And then there is a deeper knowing, which is the eyes of the soul. What's his name? William Blake said, we are led to believe a lie when we see with and not through the eye that was born in a night to perish in a night while the soul slept in beams of light. So what I'm saying is,
but that's why William Blake is not a great scientist.
Of knowing. We need a synthesis of knowing which combines empirical observation, a deeper knowing that comes from the mind and from the soul.
But I want to hear.
I think this kind of conversation is perhaps footnotes or prelude to the larger conversation of this field of mind in which people are coming into a dramatic, dynamic sense of the ways in which we relate to and are related to by the world, which ultimately I think is not just the noosphere, but is the ground and seat of being of consciousness itself.
The theosphere.
The theosphere.
The theosphere.
I'm seeing profoundly skeptical looks on both of your
Well,
faces.
Where's the audience?
do we have a theospheric sensitivity machine that we can measure this by? I mean, we have the internet. I mean, we can speak metaphorically or poetically about the power of the internet and how we're all interconnected. Yeah. But we all know that it really does come right down to cables and wireless devices, and you got to have a laptop and a computer and a modem. There's still a mechanics underneath it. So to speak metaphorically is okay as long as you recognize in the sphere of literature and poetry, that's what you do.
Yeah, but a man's reach must exceed his grasp. Or what's a metaphor?
Well, a metaphor is literally moving something from here to here in the Greek,
but
and
I
so
think
that's just helping us understand.
If permit me, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the argument that she was trying to make there is that your brand of skepticism is the death of creativity, the death of idealism. You're clamping down on...
All right. Let me address that, because Deepak has said this as well. So the word skeptic has gotten a bit of a tarnished name. It isn't anything special. It's just science. It's just a critical approach to claims. Most claims that most people make are just bunk. They are. You have to have some kind of method to find out if it's real or if it's not. So, and everybody knows this already. The FDA doesn't just approve any old drug that anybody says, I think it cures cancer or AIDS or whatever. You actually have to go through a methodology before they approve it. And all we're saying is that before you use words like Deepak does, let's define them carefully and see if there's actually any evidence. Is there data for this or not? Before we just hook ourselves to it as a belief system. And so it's really just an approach to claims. All scientists are skeptics. They just have to be, because there's so many goofy ideas out there, most of which are not true.
Michael has said, I believe this is a direct quote, that when asked what is belief, you've said it's just brain chemistry.
Yeah, that's right. Brain chemistry. Yeah. I mean, we can track exactly this is what Sam does. The magnet, the big MRI at UCLA, tracks what's going on in the brain when people form beliefs about things. That doesn't take away in any way the power of belief, the social construction of belief, and how it drives behaviors. All we want to know is try to understand. I don't think you.
We're not disagreeing with them. Yeah. Belief has a brain chemistry to it. There's no question about it.
Right, but you would argue that it's not just that.
I have never defended belief. I started out by saying that belief is a cover-up for insecurity.
Forget about belief. Just human experience is everything is contained in what you mean by just. Okay, does just mean you're taking all of the meaning out of life and just deflating us to a puddle of randomly aggregated proteins that have nothing of what interests a human being through the course of his or her life. And many people assume that a completed scientific understanding of ourselves would somehow amount to that we're just atoms in some temporary arrangement, and and everything that we love out of life, including love, it can't be captured by that. And that's just not what science is.
Would you agree, and I think you're almost saying it, that nothing but, to say something nothing but is never true. It's always both and plus much, much more. And I think we're looking at what is the much, much more.
Yeah,
when
but what you're tending to do with
arenas.
the much, much more, I think, is profoundly misleading.
Yes.
I mean, that's the rub here.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
He says what you're tending to do with the much, much more is profoundly misleading.
And worse than that, and I'm not just talking about you, I'm talking about people, worse than that, it is on a continuum with what the really religiously infatuated and dogmatic are doing, and because you're using the same words,
scientifically dogmatic and infatuated.
But like that move itself is, I mean, so you can say, you can talk about scientific fundamentalism as the corollary of religious fundamentalism. That's just a trick with words. There is no scientific fundamentalism that is analogous to religious fundamentalism, but that's a separate issue.
I think. But by the way,
if I could just, Deepak, if I could just finish this.